I and my wife have been married for 5 years, but her obsession with status and appearances is making me question everything. We've always had somewhat different views on what's important in life, but lately it's gotten way worse. And I'm not sure if I'm overreacting or if this is as bad as it feels. When we first met, Vanessa was ambitious but down to earth. As her career in marketing took off, she's become increasingly fixated on projecting an image of success. Every conversation somehow circles back to her six-figure salary, our house in the right neighborhood, or whatever designer thing she just bought. I'm not saying ambition is bad, more power to people who know what they want, but she is constantly focused on appearing superior. I grew up in a rural community where people valued relationships over stuff. My parents weren't wealthy, but we never lacked for anything important. That upbringing shaped me pretty deeply. Even though I've done well as an environmental engineer, I've never been the type to flash money around or judge people by their job titles or zip codes. My extended family is super important to me, including my cousin Daniel. We've always been close, and I try to visit a couple times a year. The problem is, for the entire time we've been together, Vanessa has found every possible excuse to avoid these visits. She's made so many dismissive comments about my relatives that I've stopped even trying to get her to come along. She once asked what she could possibly have in common with farm folk. Her exact words, I swear I'm not exaggerating. Last month, my aunt fell seriously ill, and the whole family was gathering at Daniel's place. This time, I insisted Vanessa needed to come. She reluctantly agreed, but complained nonstop about missing some industry networking event. The entire 3-hour drive there was filled with sighs and passive-aggressive comments about wasting a weekend. The moment we pulled up Daniel's driveway, I noticed a shift in Vanessa's demeanor. She stopped mid-sentence as we approached the farmhouse. I've been there dozens of times, so I'm used to it, but I guess I never really described the place to her in detail. Why would I when she showed zero interest? Edit. Quick update. Vanessa just texted me asking for Daniel's contact info for networking purposes. I haven't responded yet. The irony is killing me. She was surprised when she saw Daniel's collection of vehicles and the helicopter pad visible from the back patio. Yeah, Daniel isn't just any farmer. His agricultural technology company revolutionized sustainable farming practices across 3 continents. But to me, he's still my cousin, who is successful at what he does. I watched Vanessa stumble over her words during introductions. When Daniel mentioned his company in passing, she reacted strongly. The look on her face when Daniel's wife mentioned their recent month in Switzerland meeting with environmental ministers was noticeable, and honestly, kind of sad. The real drama kicked off when Vanessa cornered me near the outdoor kitchen. She whispered, "You deliberately humiliated me by not telling me your farmer cousin is a tech multimillionaire." I was genuinely confused. I never misrepresented anything. He is a farmer. He lives on and works his family land. She raised her voice, oblivious to the family members glancing our way. After all those condescending things I said about coming here, you set me up to look foolish. That's when it hit me. She was mad not because I'd misled her, but because her prejudice was now on full display. What made it worse was noticing Daniel's teenage daughter nearby, seemingly recording something on her phone, though I'm probably just being paranoid about that part. The drive home was silent for the first hour. When Vanessa finally spoke, it was to tell me I owed her an apology for the social ambush that made her look classless and superficial. I honestly didn't know how to respond. From my perspective, the only person who made her look that way was herself. This whole situation has me questioning not just this incident, but our entire marriage. I'm realizing how much energy I spend managing Vanessa's image concerns. Every decision seems filtered through how it will be perceived by others, which restaurants we dine at, which friends we keep, which vacations we take, even which charity events deserve our time. When we got engaged, Vanessa seemed interested in my environmental work and values. She called it refreshing compared to the corporate people she knew. Now I'm wondering if that was just another image she adopted before discarding it when something more impressive came along. It's been 3 days since the visit, and the tension in our house is high. She's moving between silence and renewed accusations about my deliberate humiliation of her. I've tried explaining that wealth doesn't define people's worth, but she seems fixated on the social embarrassment rather than recognizing her own prejudice. What's making everything more complicated is that my father, who has early onset Parkinson's, moved in with us temporarily while his house is getting accessibility renovations. He witnessed Vanessa's meltdown in the car when we left Daniel's place, and I can tell the tension is making his tremors worse, which makes me feel incredibly guilty, as if I'm failing everyone I care about. I never thought I'd be questioning my marriage over something like this, but it feels like it's exposing a fundamental difference in our values. I always believed Vanessa and I were building a life based on mutual respect and shared principles. Now, I'm not so sure we even want the same things. Part of me wants to walk away from this marriage, but I know that's not rational after 5 years together over one incident, even if it does reveal issues that were always there. Any advice on how to approach this with her would be appreciated. Thanks for reading this far. It feels good just getting it off my chest. Now for the first update. Well, this blew up way more than I expected. Thank you all for your comments, awards, and DMs on my post about my wife's reaction to meeting my cousin. It's been a week since the disaster at Daniel's farm, and things have only gotten more tense at home. For those asking about Vanessa, she's been alternating between silence and renewed accusations about my deliberate humiliation of her. I've tried explaining multiple times that wealth doesn't define a person's worth, but she seems completely fixated on the social embarrassment rather than recognizing her own prejudice. The silence is almost preferable to the accusations, if I'm being honest. What's making everything more complicated is my dad's situation. As I mentioned in my original post, he's staying with us temporarily while his house gets accessibility renovations for his Parkinson's. He witnessed Vanessa's reaction in the car when we left Daniel's place, and I can tell the constant tension in our house is making his tremors worse. Yesterday morning, I noticed him struggling to button his shirt, something he could do fairly easily last week. Breaks my heart to see him deteriorating like this. To address the top questions from my last post. 1. Yes, we've tried couples counseling before, about 2 years ago, but Vanessa quit after 3 sessions, claiming the therapist was biased against ambitious people. 2. No, this isn't the first time she's displayed this level of status anxiety, but it's definitely the most extreme case. 3. We don't have kids, thank goodness, considering the current situation. 4. I've been married to Vanessa for 5 years, together for 7. Mini update before I continue. Daniel just texted me asking if I gave Vanessa his private contact information. Apparently, she's invited him to some exclusive charity gala her company is sponsoring next month. I had absolutely no idea she'd reached out to him and definitely didn't give her his number. Not even sure how she got it. When I got home from work yesterday, I found Vanessa in our living room dressed in one of her outfits, arranging flowers and moving furniture around. My dad was sitting in the corner of the room, trying to eat dinner from a tray on his lap. His hands were shaking worse than usual as he struggled with his fork, and half his meal was already cold. I asked why he wasn't eating at the dining table like he usually does. Vanessa barely looked up from her flower arrangement when she explained she was preparing for a small dinner gathering with potential clients tomorrow and needed the space looking perfect. The way she said small dinner gathering made it clear this was anything but small. She's been known to spend thousands on these networking events. I saw you invited Daniel to your charity event, I said, helping my dad with his fork. Vanessa, oh yes, he would be the perfect addition. His environmental innovations would really impress the Sustainability Committee. It's such a perfect networking opportunity. Interesting that you're suddenly interested in my cousin. Last week he was just a hick farmer. You didn't want to waste a weekend visiting. That's not fair. I'm trying to build professional relationships that benefit both of us. Why do you always have to make everything so personal and sabotage my career opportunities? That's when my dad tried to stand up, probably feeling uncomfortable with the tension. His tray tipped and the water glass fell over. I won't repeat exactly what Vanessa said. Nothing overtly cruel, but definitely passive-aggressive. But it was something about having to rearrange everything again to accommodate my dad's care needs. Her tone made it clear his presence was inconvenient for her image. I helped my dad to his bedroom, made sure he was comfortable, and then went back to confront Vanessa. Many of you suggested in comments that I needed to be more direct about how her behavior affects others, so I decided to take that advice. Thanks for the push, seriously. You can't prioritize appearances over my father's comfort and dignity, I told her. He heard everything you said, by the way, Then, she launched into this explanation about how she grew up in subsidized housing with a single mother, how she promised herself she'd never be looked down on again, how she'd worked so hard to build this life. It was the most vulnerable I'd seen her in years, but she still framed everything as ambition rather than what it clearly is, deep insecurity. Later that night, I got a message from Daniel declining the invitation and expressing concern about Vanessa's behavior. Apparently, after he didn't respond to her first invitation, she sent multiple follow-up texts that became increasingly pressing and almost demanding. He forwarded the screenshots, and honestly, they were embarrassing to read. Who sends 7 consecutive texts to someone they just met and insulted? I'm lying in the guest room right now, unable to sleep, just turning everything over in my mind. I've been going through our relationship history, and I'm realizing this status anxiety isn't new. It's just reached a breaking point. There were so many small incidents I dismissed as harmless ambition or temporary stress. Now I see they were part of a pattern that's affecting not just our marriage, but my relationships with family members who need my support. My dad's care has to be my priority right now. His tremors have gotten noticeably worse with all this tension, and his neurologist confirmed that stress can accelerate Parkinson's symptoms. I'm starting to think I need to make some hard decisions before this situation deteriorates further, both my dad's health and my marriage. Edit for clarity. Some people asked about Vanessa's behavior before this incident. Looking back, there were definitely warning signs. She gradually stopped joining me for casual dinners with my college friends who didn't have impressive careers. She insisted we move to a more expensive neighborhood, even though our previous house was perfectly nice and closer to my work. She even upgraded my wardrobe while I was on a business trip, donating clothes I was perfectly happy with because they weren't befitting someone at my professional level. I dismissed these as quirks rather than seeing the pattern. I want to thank everyone for the support and perspectives, even the harsh ones. Sometimes those are the most necessary. Many of you pointed out that I've been enabling Vanessa's behavior by not establishing boundaries, and you're absolutely right. The comments about sunk cost fallacy were impactful too. Just because we've been together for years doesn't mean I should keep investing in a relationship that's fundamentally misaligned with my values. The coming week will be crucial as I figure out how to address this with Vanessa once and for all. I'll post another update when I have more clarity on what happens next. Now for the second update. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my last update about my status-obsessed wife, and the situation has gotten much worse. Thank you all for the support and advice. I've been reading everything, even though I haven't had time to respond. Taking care of my dad is basically a full-time job now. So picking up where I left off, Vanessa has spent the last 3 weeks trying to get closer to my cousin Daniel and his wife. She's been connecting with them on every social media platform, liking all their posts, including ones from 2017, yikes, and constantly finding professional collaboration opportunities to message them about. It's been equal parts embarrassing and frustrating to watch. Meanwhile, my dad's condition has gotten significantly worse. His tremors are much more pronounced now, and his neurologist confirmed that the constant stress in our house is accelerating his symptoms. I've had to reduce my hours at the environmental engineering firm where I work on a major watershed protection project. Not ideal timing, since we're in a critical implementation phase, but family comes first, something Vanessa clearly doesn't understand. When I explained the situation to my supervisor, I received some disturbing news. Apparently, Vanessa had already called my boss, claiming I was using my father's condition as an excuse to avoid a major presentation to clients. Who does that? When I confronted her about it that evening, she just shrugged and said she was protecting our financial future, since my reduced hours might affect my chances for advancement. Her behavior continues to astound me. I thought things couldn't get worse, but she keeps finding new issues. Yesterday was the breaking point. I walked into our kitchen to find Vanessa directing a catering team, setting up for a dinner party. My dad was sitting in the sunroom, looking confused and uncomfortable. When I checked his medication log, I realized he'd missed his afternoon dose because no one had reminded him during all the preparations. "What's going on?" I asked Vanessa, already feeling my blood pressure rising. "And why didn't you make sure my dad took his medication? We can find a last-minute caregiver to take him. It's not a big deal." She seemed genuinely confused by my growing anger. "This dinner is important for our future. You should be thanking me for setting this up." I was already furious, but then I overheard her on the phone introducing herself to someone as an environmental advocacy consultant. She was literally co-opting my professional identity to establish common ground with Daniel and his contacts. For the record, she works in marketing and knows absolutely nothing about environmental engineering beyond what she's overheard from my work calls. When I called her out on it, she got defensive. "I'm building connections that benefit both of us. You're too busy being stuck in outdated family obligations instead of leveraging relationships for advancement." She actually said, "leveraging relationships," with a straight face, like my cousin is just a networking opportunity and not an actual human being. That's when my dad appeared in the doorway from the sunroom. He was unsteady on his feet, but had this determined look in his eyes. "I remember when you used to visit me at the community college, Vanessa," he said quietly. "Back when I taught economics." The room went silent. My dad rarely brings up his teaching career since his diagnosis. He was a brilliant professor who genuinely cared about his students. Watching him lose the ability to do what he loved has been devastating. "You stopped coming once my tremors got noticeable," he continued, his voice steady. "And then you rescheduled your wedding when my symptoms worsened that summer." I'd completely forgotten about the wedding date change. Vanessa had claimed it was about venue availability, but now the timing made perfect sense. She hadn't wanted my dad's increasingly visible symptoms to distract from her perfect day. Vanessa's composure faltered. For a moment, she looked hurt. "You're all making me out to be a villain just because I have ambition," she said, her voice rising. "My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families who never acknowledged her existence. They ignored her completely. I promised myself I would never be invisible. I would be someone who matters." At that moment, I finally understood Vanessa's issues with status. Her focus on appearances wasn't just superficial materialism. It came from something real and painful. But understanding the source of her behavior didn't make it any less harmful. She'd been treating my father as if he wasn't important, exactly what she'd feared for herself. I made the decision instantly. "The dinner party is canceled. I'm taking my dad to his appointment." "You can't do that." Vanessa looked panicked. "Everyone will be here in an hour. Then you'll have to explain to them why we're not here." I helped my dad get ready and drove him to his appointment. He was quiet in the car, but he reached over and patted my hand at one point. "You're a good son," he said. "I'm sorry about all this." "You have nothing to apologize for, Dad. Seriously, why do good people always apologize for situations they didn't create? Meanwhile, the actual troublemakers never think they've done anything wrong." The neurologist adjusted my dad's medication and ordered some additional tests. It was nearly 9:30 p.m. by the time we got home. I expected to find an angry Vanessa waiting, but instead, the house was empty. The catering equipment was gone, and there was no sign that a dinner party had been planned at all. I found a note on the counter. "I'm staying at the Hilton downtown. When you decide you're ready to stop embarrassing me by prioritizing your father over my important networking event, we can talk. V." I'm still trying to process the fact that she thinks that is the problem here. I got my dad settled for the night, and then just sat on the couch staring at her note. This woman literally called my boss behind my back, tried to force me to skip a critical medical appointment for my sick father, impersonated my profession to impress people, and then had the audacity to act like I'm the one who wronged her. I haven't heard from Vanessa yet today. It's been about 20 hours since she left that note. Daniel texted this morning to check on my dad and mentioned that Vanessa had called him to apologize for the canceled dinner. Apparently, she told him I had a family emergency I was being dramatic about and suggested rescheduling for next week. He declined. Thank God at least one person in this situation has boundaries. I don't know what happens next. Part of me wants to try to understand Vanessa's perspective. Growing up with a mother who was treated as unimportant by wealthy employers clearly left deep scars. But another part of me is just done with making excuses for someone who could so casually disregard my father's health and my professional reputation. For those who suggested therapy in my last post, I actually called a therapist this morning. I have my first appointment next week. I need help sorting through all this, regardless of what happens with my marriage. I honestly don't know if there's any coming back from this. The woman I thought I married wouldn't have done any of these things. but maybe that woman never existed outside of my imagination. I've started therapy to help process all of this with the whole Vanessa situation. We'll update when there's more to share. Now for the final update. My status-obsessed wife has finally gone too far, and it's over. I want to thank everyone for the incredible support through this whole ordeal. Your advice literally saved both my career and my sanity. It's been almost 2 weeks since my last update. Feels like 2 years, honestly. So much has happened that I've barely had time to process it all, but I promised you all a final update, so here goes. The morning after Vanessa left that note about staying at the Hilton, I still hadn't heard from her. I figured she was just cooling off and would eventually come to her senses. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was Daniel. He asked if we could meet privately to discuss something important about Vanessa. My stomach immediately dropped. We met at a coffee shop near my office that afternoon. Daniel looked uncomfortable as he slid his tablet across the table to show me a series of emails. It turns out, Vanessa had been contacting his business partners, positioning herself as a crucial connection between Daniel's agricultural innovations and potential urban markets. That was bad enough, but seeing that she had implied she had proprietary information about watershed protection through my work that could benefit Daniel's irrigation systems, she was using my environmental research to position herself as an insider with valuable connections. This wasn't just embarrassing. It was potentially a serious breach of my professional ethics and confidentiality agreements. The watershed project I've been working on for 3 years could have been compromised. And for what? So she could feel important at a dinner party? Daniel was incredibly understanding about the whole thing. He assured me his team hadn't acted on any of the information Vanessa had tried to share, and that they'd shut down her offers immediately. He was actually there to warn me that she seemed to be escalating her attempts to insert herself into his business network. I tried calling Vanessa right after meeting with Daniel, but she didn't pick up. Instead, she texted back, "Networking with people who appreciate ambition will return when you're ready to prioritize our future." The irony of her lecturing me about our future while actively sabotaging my career was not lost on me. That evening, while my dad was resting, I decided to review our finances. Vanessa had spent over $6,000 in the past 3 weeks on new clothes, shoes, and even a ridiculously expensive watch. It was pretty obvious she was gearing up to impress Daniel's business circle. I couldn't sleep that night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called my firm's ethics department first thing and explained the situation. They were surprisingly supportive. To everyone who said, "Document everything," you were right. Then, I called the Hilton, confirmed Vanessa was still staying there, and asked if she was currently in the building. The receptionist mentioned she was having breakfast in the hotel restaurant. I grabbed copies of the emails Daniel had forwarded me, our recent credit card statements, and drove to the hotel. I was angry. I spotted Vanessa, seated across from a man. She was laughing at something he said. She froze when she saw me approaching. "Honey, what a surprise!" "This is Mr. Calloway, a potential investor in some exciting new agricultural technology." She turned to him. "And this is my husband, the environmental engineer I was telling you about." I sat down without being invited and placed the folder of financial statements on the table. "We need to talk about your unauthorized sharing of confidential project information, Vanessa." She laughed too loudly. "Oh, he's just confused again. The stress from his father's care has been making him mix things up." The investor looked uncomfortable as I placed copies of the emails she'd sent to Daniel's partners on the table. "These emails where you clearly offered insights into protected research in exchange for a consulting position. Am I mixing those up too? You're sabotaging my networking because you're jealous of my ambition." The investor cleared his throat and asked, "Is there an actual confidentiality issue here?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I've already contacted my firm's ethics committee and Daniel's legal team to address the breach. My wife has no authorization to share any information about the watershed project." Mr. Calloway stood up immediately. Smart man. "I think I'll leave you two to discuss this privately." Left alone, Vanessa finally broke. The facade crumbled. "Daniel rejected my consulting offers twice," she admitted. "I just needed to prove my value somehow." "By risking my entire career?" I asked. "You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible. My mother cleaned houses for people who looked right through her for 20 years. I swore I would never let that happen to me." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. I could understand her pain, even if I couldn't excuse what she'd done with it. I get that your childhood left scars, Vanessa, but understanding why you did this doesn't make it okay. You betrayed my professional ethics, dismissed my father's needs, and prioritized status over our actual relationship. So what happens now? She asked quietly. I'll be filing for divorce, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt saying it. I've moved Dad permanently into my care and will be staying at my place while you pack up your things from the house. She stared at me in shock. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. As I left the hotel, I felt grief for the relationship we once had and relief at no longer measuring my worth through Vanessa's distorted lens of status and ambition. The last 2 weeks have been surprisingly peaceful. My dad and I are settling into a good routine at my place. It's smaller, but so much calmer. I've gone back to full-time at work, and my boss has been incredibly supportive through all of this. The ethics committee found no actual damage was done since Daniel's team never acted on any of Vanessa's offers of insider information. Vanessa has moved most of her things out of the house. We're selling it and splitting the proceeds as part of the divorce settlement. She sent a few texts trying to restart the conversation, but I've kept my responses brief and factual. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. Daniel and his wife invited Dad and me over for dinner last weekend. It was actually really nice. No pretense, no networking, just family spending time together. My dad's tremors have noticeably improved with the reduction in household stress. The neurologist says that's common with Parkinson's patients. I've continued with therapy, which has been eye-opening. I'm learning a lot about why I stayed in a relationship with someone who so clearly didn't share my values. Turns out I have my own issues to work through, don't we all? Edit. A few people have asked about Vanessa's mom. I reached out to her last week to let her know what was happening. She wasn't surprised at all, which was telling. She said Vanessa has always struggled with measuring her worth through external validation. I feel sad that Vanessa couldn't overcome her past, but I also recognize that it wasn't my job to fix her at the expense of my own well-being. I want to thank this community from the bottom of my heart. Your support and advice helped me see what was happening clearly when I was too close to it. To everyone who said, I deserved better, you were right. To those who told me to document everything, you literally saved my career. And to those who pointed out that my dad deserved dignity and respect, thank you for reinforcing what I knew in my heart. This has been the hardest few months of my life, but I'm coming out of it stronger and with a much clearer sense of what really matters. I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, but I'm grateful for the clarity it's brought to my life and the lessons I've learned about standing up for my values.